Welcome everyone. So today we are going to discuss the common problems with backside 180s. So the main focus is going to be on kickers, but you can see we've got a few different combos of using the basic backside rotation movement. So we'll just run through a few clips here. It just gives you a flavour for stuff, doesn't it? So a little bit of a longer session this one. I'm going to go through the basics in the structure that we've been using on some of the other videos. So we've got the approach, the takeoff, the trick itself, and the landing. Now some of these will blend a little bit as we kind of look into more detail, but we'll literally try and keep things super simple so you can isolate any of the issues you might have and a few drills to help tackle them. So I'm not going to kind of go through all of this video now. But let's rewind back to the approach, shall we, and just watch a couple of these clips here. Alright, so I'm going to pause it there. So this is a kind of goofy focus takeoff actually to hit a box. But you can see I'm kind of in line with the feature. I go slightly heels, and then as I kind of get prepped for the rotation, I go with slight pressure onto the toe edge. So for a backside spin, toe edge takeoff, yeah, in terms of that is easier anyway to start with. And you can see here a little bit more obvious line in, a little bit more flowy. So you can see heel, toe, pressure as we're going up the jump. Now we've got a tiny bit of rotation here, which is acceptable, but we don't want to go too crazy. And this is where we can see just a couple of the common errors that come in as people turn too much. So quite often people are trying to use the turn of their board to make the rotation happen, as opposed to spinning in the air once they've left the jump. So we can see here that kind of wash effect. So we're losing the pressure because we're trying to pop as well. When I'm doing a backside 180 or 3 to a certain extent, I'm trying to pop the board, which is the even weight extension of both feet. So I lose that platform for rotation if I wash across the face of the jump. Plus my board can flatten a little bit as well as I'm turning, and that increases the chance of catching your heel edge on the lip of the jump. So if we look with this example, approach is pretty good. Toe edge pressure is coming in quite nicely. We've got our pre-wind, which is great. But what we notice is as we pressure, we're starting to kind of flatten the board off a little bit early, and we're starting to grip the heel edge of the board. And that causes that fall there. So let's just watch that again through. There, so you can imagine if someone kind of pre-rotates too early or turns too early on the jump here, and they can really easily catch the tail of their board on the lip of the jump. And I've seen it especially when people try to go from a backside 180 to a backside 360. They just really kind of crank it and overturn and catch their edge on the lip of the jump. Okay, so just watching me go over this pole, so you can see pretty straight takeoff. I've got a tiny bit of rotation. I'm popping, pop, up in the air, kind of spotting what I'm trying to jump over, keeping a little bit of an eye on my landing as well. Through. So let's run through the basics again. On the approach, flowy line. I generally think line up with one side of the jump, take off on the other side of the jump on the toes. So you can see kind of lining up on the right here, taking off on the left. And then you'll get that flowy line. We're not looking for massively aggressive kind of quick changes of edge. We're looking for a flowing line through. Not too much turn on the jump, not trying to wash off the jump. Trying to get that platform, which is that nice toe edge grip. So then when you pop, it's a lot easier to bring in that rotation when you leave the jump. Alright, pause it here. So we've got next phase, takeoff and blocking. So just try, as you watch these clips, try and pay attention to where the individuals are looking and what their shoulders are doing. Alright, so let's rewind that. So this is probably one of the most common issues I find when people are first starting to learn backside 180s, because it's a blind rotation, yeah, to a certain extent. So as people jump, they really want to keep looking down the slope, and they use predominantly their kind of hips and their back leg to try and kind of twist and separate their rotation rather than kind of being in unison, because we're trying to kind of lock and float with the hips and the shoulders and everything kind of locked together. But you can see here, shoulders are still pointing down the slope, head is kind of trying to look down the slope, and that just stalls the rotation. You can see here, we pause, can we see eye line looking down the slope, shoulders are still pointing down the slope, and we're overuse of the hips to try and make the board rotate, and that blocks. Once again, eye line down the slope, shoulders pointing down the slope, using the hips. So we'll talk a little bit more, because a couple of different issues are kind of interconnected a little bit, and I'll show you some drills in a little while to help with this. But the basic principle is really we're trying to kind of lock, almost stiffen up the torso and the head, so everything kind of floats more in unison off the jump rather than kind of separating the spin. So let's run through those clips again just so you know what's going on. Alright, so this is kind of interlinked a little bit with this blocking. So if we can imagine that as we take off, we can go off axis because we can dump the front shoulder, lock in too much. Can you see here? And we're kind of almost pulling the hip and the back of the foot around, or the back foot round, to get the rotation happen. And we've kind of locked here, but because we've dumped the front shoulder too early to try and make the rotation happen, we've gone off axis. So if we were trying to do like a backside Miller flip or something like that, we would dump that front shoulder in, but we'd need the ability to keep rotating to come back round to our heel edge to land. So you can see here, we kind of dropping the head, dropping the shoulder, and that kind of locks and goes off axis there. So this can be tricky to land. See here, once again, pulling of the hip, back foot round. So we are kind of locked in, but it's because we're off axis, we're throwing ourselves in at the deep end. Managed to save it there. See, related to the previous one as well, can you see we've kind of got shoulders and head a little bit aligned down the slope, so it's difficult to maintain balance, and that just kind of throws you into an off axis landing. So those two elements, let's think about that. So let's recap the basics there. We've got off axis and we've got blocking from head and shoulders. So they both kind of weave a little bit together, but you can kind of isolate things a little bit more if you look at some footage. So you can see, oh, is it primarily my kind of shoulders or head blocking, or is it primarily that I'm dumping the shoulder at takeoff that's throwing me off balance? So just be aware of, analyse some footage that you've got so you can understand exactly what's going on with your movement at takeoff, so you can start to kind of dial in and understand how best to correct those. And we'll talk about some drills in a bit I'll go through. But what I wanted to talk of now is basically you can block. I know it sounds weird after I've just been saying, oh, you can't block, but you can block as long as you keep your centre of mass between your feet and your head not looking down the slope. So I will often kind of spot my landing. So you can see here, can you see I'm kind of spotting my landing, but I'm keeping everything stacked over the centre of the board, and so I can float. So I can, a little bit of kind of shoulder shift or hip rotation, so I can separate, but I keep everything stacked. So when I land, I can kind of get away with it. Now you can see it here, prepping for the back one off. See, heads here, we're using hips to separate and rotate, but centre of mass is still between the feet, so we're not going off axis. So if you can keep pretty stacked and pretty balanced, you can separate your body here just on the piece. Can you see? A little bit better here, head's not kind of looking down the slope as much, shoulders are still blocking a bit, but because primarily most of the weight's between the feet, you can get away with it. It's a weird one. So now you'll know as you're kind of developing with your rotations whether you can kind of blag it a bit more. Try and work through each. So let's just have a look. So you can see here, let's just walk back through this. So you can see if I dump the front shoulder, not keeping my weight stacked between, or my centre of mass between my feet, head is down, then that's going to throw me off axis and keep me in an unbalanced position. Whereas if I can keep centre of mass there, even though I'm kind of blocking a little bit, head is not so much down, a little bit more back up the slope, then you can keep it together and maintain balance. So you've kind of got options. You can see some of the pros and stuff, they'll actually almost like pre-look. So they'll really fully look back up the slope and kind of do that lovely separation. You can see it with like Torsten Hog mode, kind of doing bits and pieces like that. So you've got options. I kind of quite like to spot my landing a little bit and then use a little bit of kind of hip rotation and stuff to kind of make it happen, but it is personal preference. But if you keep the basic principles correct, that stacking and alignment, then you'll kind of get away with not being totally balanced. Now let's talk about a few drills. So if you are having issues with landing the trick, or at least initiating the rotation, so let's go back to basics again. So if your head's blocking, shoulders are blocking the rotation, if you're going off axis, then what you want to do is take it one stage back and do some basic piece drills to try and tidy up and get everything kind of stacked in your rotation. So what you can do here, a couple of easy drills, static on the piece. Do a little backside one, try and see if you can keep everything together so you're not just using your hips to rotate, your head is coming round with the board. So a couple of these basic drills will just help you kind of just tidy up a couple of things going on before you kind of go back to throwing it off the jump again. So let's think, little piece drill here, just little jumps toes to toe, so you can start to feel that balance and how you can kind of be more stacked over the board, keeping your centre of mass between your feet, and then understanding that relationship between the hip and the shoulder and the head in terms of initiating that rotation. So that covers off a lot with that. I mean, it is kind of blending. It'll be down to you guys to kind of really analyse what's going on, look at your footage and kind of relate back to this video, and then think, right, what can you do? So we could go back to some piece drills, or you could focus, for instance, if your head is blocking as you're going down the slope, then what you might want to be doing is maybe looking back up to the lip of the jump, or back up the piece, or following your front foot with your head as you leave the lip of the jump. So you've got bits and pieces like that to do. If you're going off axis, then you know you're probably dropping your shoulder and your head, so you can kind of keep your head up. So that will help your eye line, keep you balanced. And then, like I say, these kind of drills will just help you to just feel that balance and that stacking. So let's talk about the trick itself. So quite often, as people land on their backside rotation, they kind of just wash out on the heel edge and stuff. So what we're trying to do, which you see they're washing out, let's have a look. Let's just watch a couple of these, shall we, and just see what's going on. You can see there's like a little bit of kind of, I mean, we're going to talk about over rotation in a bit, but the primary thing here is edge transfer. So when I'm doing a backside 180, what I'm actually trying to do is not do a bang on 180. I'm actually trying to slightly under rotate the 180, so I can go from a toes takeoff to a toes landing. Because when people transfer on their heels and their shoulders transfer over to their heels, it's very difficult to maintain balance. And this means you're either going to kind of wash out on your heel edge, like here, yeah, or you're going to kind of under rotate or over rotate and just kind of blow the edge out there. So imagine you're trying to do kind of toes to toes takeoff, and we'll look at those in a little bit after we've kind of gone through the over rotation, which is similar and linked to the previous section. Basically you land, you've got kind of so much momentum. If you're not getting that control of the board, then you just kind of over rotate instantly because you've kind of just kept the momentum going. And this is how you would kind of start to build towards your backside 360s. Because for a backside 3, I mean, ideally you're going to start kind of toes to heel edge and kind of scrub it round, like we can see here. But when we're doing the back 1, we've actually got to try and lock that landing, haven't we? So we want a really nice kind of clean takeoff, clean landing, and riding away switch for a bit, so it looks like you really know what you're doing. Do you know what I mean? You're not kind of totally over rotating instantly and lacking that level of control. So let's watch a couple of these again. You can see power and momentum's coming through. So let's look at what I really want to see, which is toes take off, slight under rotation, locking on the toe edge, so then you can ride away in switch for a little bit before you then scrub around to your normal riding stance. Toes, toes, ride away a bit, and then come back. So you can see here, toes, toes. Yeah, toes, toes. And this is a little drill you can do. You can just literally do a 90 on the piece. We're working on bringing in alignment and head control here. But you can work to make sure that you can land on your toe edge and maintain that kind of carvy grip. Because quite often when people are learning these to start with, they land toes, they collapse the back of their board into the snow, and then they catch their heel edge. So they're not able to control themselves fully. So you want to make sure you kind of get that control level. Toes, toes, get used to it. You can build up as well. See this, it's kind of a little side hip. So you don't have to go straight off a jump to start with. You can really build up slowly, get your control level, get comfortable with the rotation and working together with your board as a unit to ease in, and then you can kind of land 90, scrub it round and get that control. So you can see here just a few of the guys. Now you can then drop off something if you want as well. So you're kind of getting that compression which you typically would off a jump. So you can see if you can maintain that strong control. You can see here, I'm kind of spotting my landing again. I'm cheating a little bit, but it's working. I can keep my centre of mass here, going toes, toes. You can see that little dust on the toe edge, maintaining control, not looking too early round to where I'm going. Because as soon as you look up, you're literally going to scrub around and rotate. So that's the thing I try and do here. So when I land, I try and look back, just chill. Don't try and look where I'm going, because as soon as I look where I'm going, I'm going to start rotating around. You can see it just starting to happen there. So let's have a little look in terms of the toes and toes again. So toes take off. You can see the way I've got my board slightly angled there. Toes, see the dust coming up? Lock in on the toes as much as you can, then let it feather onto the heel edge, and then hold it and then come back out. Alright, so that's the basics on those. Let's run through a couple of the highlights, shall we? And see. So, main fixing points. So this is interesting, wasn't it? So we've discussed okay to block. So remember those foundations, yeah? If you can keep your centre of mass between your feet, keep your head not looking too far down the slope, you can land your backside 180s without too many issues, yeah? But if you start going off axis, dumping the front shoulder, keep looking down the slope, keep your shoulders too pointed down the slope, then you're going to literally just rely on your hip rotation, and that's going to really block the 180. And then when we're talking about the trick itself, thinking about alignment, so thinking about that power level, that kind of stacking coming through the body, you can see here, and you can practice once again on the piste, build up that momentum and that balance. Once again, remember, we're trying to keep toes to toes, yeah, not toes to heels on the 180, because you'll kind of slip out or you'll over rotate, as we can see here. You just kind of like skip out, and you can see here over rotation, just wash through, so you won't get that grip. So build up, use side hits if you can. But like I say, what we're trying to do is a nice flowy toe side, take off, toe edge landing, trying to hold it in switch for a little bit so you look like you know what you're doing. Toes, toes, lock it, don't over rotate. Little flow in, toes, toes, lock if you can. Alright. So let's see, toes, toes, lock. There we go. Okay, so there's quite a lot to digest there. So hopefully it'll be enough for you guys just to kind of start the ball rolling. Like I say, the best bet is just to look at the footage you've got, relate back to the major issues I've mentioned here, and then try and think about breaking down the drills in terms of how you can kind of take it maybe to the piste and then back to the park. And then I would say for park wise, probably do like a side hit first so you can really get a real defined toe edge takeoff, toe edge landing, and then go to the kicker so then you can lock everything in from then, and then everything should start to flow quite nicely. So good luck. Any questions, message me. If not, hope to see you guys out on the piste or in the park and you get these things dialed in so you've got no issues with your backside 180s. Have fun.